Welcome back. Yeah, we were remiss. I mean, Abdul, you wanted to comment quickly. I asked, you know, what are is there any one country in the world doing a good job with it now?
Yeah.
And did you have a response to that?
I think historically there's countries that like we can opine on, you know, the elements of democracy that may or may have not existed within them, and I think that's where DSA likes to draw a line in kind of stating out democratic socialism. But you have in, you know, countries where it's almost an objective fact that and this also does not hold true that everything that they did was right, but in the Soviet Union, life expectancies from, you know, its creation to when it actually ended dramatically increased.
Yeah. I mean, you're 24.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
I'm just telling you, that's an argument that doesn't hold weight with a lot of people.
Oh, yeah.
I've been to Russia, and I don't think you want what they had. But I think
there's a difference between wanting what they have and being able to actually like look at certain elements of how the economy was structured and see, you know, benefits to which people's lives were able to experience.
I mean, that's a whole nother can of worms. I'm just going to put a pin in that one. Yeah. If we have time at the end, we can talk about Soviet-style communism, because now it's not. It's a dictatorship there. I want to go like through like some political stuff if we can. Like, if you had your druthers, and I've read the platform, like, what would you do to the U.S. Constitution? Because a lot of stuff that's in the platform would, if you were actually to do it, you would have to either eliminate the Constitution or amend it heavily, which is almost impossible to do. So in some ways it feels more hypothetical, but like, you know, whether it's the Supreme Court or the Senate or the executive branch, just from where you sit, whatever the platform is, what would you do to the Constitution of the United States to conform to what you want to do in this country?
Well, I mean, I think there's much of the platform that we're skipping over if we're talking about that in terms of like the Constitution, where we talk about some of the impacts on the military and reducing military.
No, I have military, education, housing, economy, healthcare, but then there's also the structure of government, which is where I wanted to start.
So for the Constitution itself, right? I mean, it's been amended in the past. It's a difficult process for sure. It's been amended in the past. We can argue now that the Constitution doesn't even matter with the way that Trump is running the country, but as part of our platform, abolishing the Senate, right? The Senate is not a democratic house, or it's not a democratic piece of our country where it is prioritizing land over people. So eliminating the Senate and increasing the amount of representatives in the House of Representatives to ensure that there is greater say from people, to ensure that our legislative body is a fully democratic system.
But you know why the Senate was founded? It was the Connecticut Compromise, which was that the smaller states didn't want to go fully by population distribution, so they thought they would balance it out with equal representation between the 50 states.
And a lot of those, likewise, you know, for many of the years of our country's of the United States' first existence, senators weren't actually elected; they were actually chosen by like the states in which they came.
And it's also meant to be a living, breathing document. Even from our founders, the Constitution and the laws that govern this country are not meant to be set in stone. They're meant to evolve as the people evolve, as the country evolves, and we are at a point now where I think it is quite popular of a position actually to get rid of the Senate, because we're seeing its failures and the fact that it's not holding up to what it was meant to do.
I think both bodies are pretty brutal right now, but I mean, I don't think I'd go to the point where I'd like to make them better, and I don't think many people are going to be down with destroying the bicameral nature of the country.
And I think that's why, for me, like the focus really primarily are on, because there are aspirations to do that.
Right. So you're saying that right now this part of the conversation is a waste of time?
And not really like a waste of time as much as like, cool, there are many developed, you know, if we want to say it very clear, there are many developed nations that, you know, are no strangers to revising their constitutions or even having new constitutions altogether.
Right.
When we are talking about, you know, a body such as the Senate, you know, that is definitely something realistically you could not get rid of tomorrow. But I think, you know, the purpose of the platform is really setting forth like a future vision of
it's setting a North Star.
So immigration is a fascinating topic, because you talked about ICE already, and clearly if it were just about getting undocumented criminals out, this would be an operation would have been done would be over, right? It's an ongoing thing. But besides abolishing ICE, how would you handle would the Democratic Socialists of America handle immigration and border?
So when it comes to immigration, it is improving our asylum process, improving our immigration process, giving people an actual pathway to citizenship that doesn't have as many hurdles as it has now. Is because at the end of the day, this is a country that, although we're not practicing this right now, this is a country of immigrants. This is a country that is meant to be the melting pot of the world, right? That is the idea that has been said about America for decades, for centuries. And although we haven't practiced that, that is the ideal, and that is what we should be striving.
But you do believe in a process. You do believe in a border.
I believe in a process in which people can come to this country as immigrants and then eventually become citizens.
Yeah, and I think that I think it's almost even impossible to talk about the vision for immigration as divorced from the vision for like foreign policy, where oftentimes many of these countries that we actually see folks coming from, you have folks that are seeking asylum or looking to immigrate as a result of whether it be from like the United States or other capitalist nations, measures militarily in terms of colonialism or neocolonialism
and economic.
But would you let everyone in who's under duress in another country?
Well, I think that if we take care of those issues, then those are like simply like questions that you get to frame from a completely different perspective.
But it's the United States can't solve the world's problems in terms of...
I know. I'm just saying that like if you kind of like actually shifted, if we didn't, participate in the invasions and, economic sanctions of certain countries, the problem that we would be looking at with, what to do with the amount of, undocumented immigrants and, the flow of undocumented immigrants would be a much different...
So if we changed our foreign policy, we'd have fewer people wanting to come here? Is that what you're saying?
I think that we would be historically would be able to say that we have not had a responsibility in the crippling of social fabrics in different countries, which I don't think.
I think for example, right, like let's see why there is so much immigration from Latin America, for example. It has been because over the past 50, 60 years or so, U.S. corporations have completely destabilized the economies, extracted resources, used Latin Americans as cheap labor to prop up companies here. We have toppled governments. We have sent in CIA operatives to go and destabilize the political and social and economic fabrics of nations that we consider to be antagonistic to the U.S., that are simply trying to own their own resources, own their own wealth, and not have that be extracted out of the country. And these destabilizing conditions do create immigration.
These are common. Outside of Venezuela, that's a real 20th century kind of trope. I just read The Fish That Ate the Whale about the banana business in the 20th century, and they toppled Guatemala, Honduras. But that stuff is not quite the same. The exploitation may still be there, but it's not anywhere near on the scale.
But I would say the same thing as
we're tight on time. I got a lot of issues to go through. Healthcare.
Sure.
How would you handle it in this country?
I think that a universal healthcare system is something that, when you look at it, is something that, many countries, that we would look at as the West writ large, have. They have
like Canada, Great United Kingdom.
Yeah,
they have it. Cuba had an incredible Cuba has it. Not anymore, unfortunately, because of the U.S., but Cuba had an incredible healthcare system where we were not only taking care of our own here, but we were sending doctors abroad to go help out with people in war-torn countries. Again, I'm a product of the Cuban healthcare
So what would incentivize,
system.
You don't mind the government running that?
Absolutely not.
And do you worry about the incentives for people to become doctors, nurses, physicians' assistants would diminish with the taking away of the opportunity to make more money?
Again, like the Cuba response, my cousin is currently becoming a doctor in Cuba. I think the idea of embodying socialism is reframing our society and the way that our society is structured away from an incentive of profit to an incentive of the collective good and uplifting of people. And you don't need to have a profit motive to want to become a healer.
Yeah, and I would say that one of the things I also think through that is that when you're able to actually, because this is why it's very important to not think about some of these things in a vacuum, because in a world where you're able to, make sure housing is a human right, the average person doesn't have to think all that difficultly or hard.
Okay, well, let's talk about housing. I mean, we should have the whole world should be rent controlled. You want to take the market forces completely out of housing? I don't know how that would work. You're going to just have the government build housing for, I don't even know what the vision would look like.
Yeah, so when we actually talk about something like housing, that's actually a really good example where even if you could not plausibly actually take over all housing, that would not be something that the government is able to actually do in a realistic way. But when we actually talk about actual things that would be possible, would be the creation and promotion of social housing, as well as cooperatives in which people are able to actually collectively own the homes that they live in. Would there of course be certain elements of government actual impact on that to make sure that all of that happens? Yes, absolutely. It's really necessary. So I think the focus with that would actually be more so on making sure that the government has a role in the creation and expansion of, social housing.
And on top of that too, I think it would also be an incredible opportunity for a jobs program. If we look at how much benefits, right, and how much the government is pouring into ICE agents, right? There's $60,000 contracts, and then they're getting all these benefits just for coming in to terrorize and tear apart families. Think of that instead, something like that. We had a government-run public housing program where people were getting pulled in to build houses across the country, to build affordable houses and actually uplift our communities instead of tearing apart the most vulnerable ones in it.
Let's take a quick break.
Yeah.
We'll pause, and I want to ask a little bit about how these views shape your work in Hamden when your day-to-day basis, and I also want to talk about what the future holds and a little bit about the economy when we come right back.